Hello, hello, you all. Let's hope you are enjoying Trailblazer DX. Thank you very much for coming and attend this session. There is an amazing option of content that you can attend to, and I'm very grateful that you are here with me looking at this. So if you had the opportunity to join us this morning on the advanced Salesforce Functions session that we had a breakout on room 2005. It was full house. We covered some of the topics that we are going to mention here. If you miss it, but nice, you are going to learn things here as well. So what I'm going to be talking about is the new feature that we recently launched, that it's the ability to integrate Heroku data with Salesforce Functions. So please raise your hand if you are familiar with Salesforce Functions. For those of you that are not familiar with Salesforce Functions, it is a product that we also launched the past year, which gives you the capacity of offload a lot of compute from platform to an elastic compute services. Imagine that you are running serverless functions written either in Java or JavaScript using Node.js that are going to be tightly integrated with Salesforce within an authenticated context running on the trusted boundary. So you can offload some of that compute that sometimes you cannot do it today on Apex, or you might be hitting governor limits. You might want to have an extra compute to run those operations. Now, in Functions, you are able to have access to external data sources. And these data sources are available through Heroku. Heroku have different services like PostgreSQL, Redis, and Apache Kafka that can be attached and integrated into a function. My name is Julian Duque. I'm a principal developer advocate at Salesforce, working with the developer relations team, mostly helping the Elastic Services team, creating content, videos, blog posts, and going to different events to talk about technologies I love. Forward-looking statement, even though I'm going to be talking about things that are recently available, I might be mentioning some things that might happen in the future, so please don't make any purchase decisions based off the information I'm going to give you. I'm not a financial advisor, and this might be very familiar to you all if you have been around in Salesforce events. So, I'm going to be doing more like a tutorial. You don't need to have a computer or anything like that. I might share the slides after this on my Twitter, so you can follow this along on your own. But what do we need to have before integrating Heroku data stores with functions? First, you will need an Heroku account. And by the way, everything I'm going to be telling you here doesn't cost anything. I am going to show you how to use the free resources we have. There is only one thing, which is Apache Kafka, that costs a lot of money. So I avoided doing the demo and teaching about Kafka because the purpose here is educating so everybody can do this on your own. So you will need to have an Heroku account to be able to have the data resources to attach to your functions. You will need a Salesforce Functions org. For that, we have an ongoing trial. You can go to functions.salesforce.com, sign up for the trial, and you will have access to an org that has functions enabled for you to deploy an application. But for the demo that I'm going to show you today, I am running the functions locally on my computer. Even though I am connecting to the Heroku resources remotely, I'm using local functions, so you can see that you can also develop functions locally without having an org. You will need Visual Studio Code. It's the IDE of choice for writing functions. You need the Salesforce and Heroku CLIs. Make sure you have the latest Salesforce CLI because it's the one that comes with the SF command. That's the one we use to interact with functions. And the Heroku CLI is the one that we will use to perform the attachment of the data resource with the functions. Depending on the language of your choice, as of today, you can write functions in Java and Node.js using either JavaScript or TypeScript. And in the future, this is why I told the forward-looking statement, we are adding support for Python. And we will be working on more languages. If you have a very nice use case with a different language that we don't support, let us know so I can go and tell the PMs, the people behind, hey, there is interest on this specific language, so please work on support it. And for that, the best way or the only way to have data resources on an Heroku account is through an application. So we need to create an Heroku application to attach those resources. I already did this. I already created the Heroku application. I already added the resources. But since I mentioned that this is going to be kind of like a tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you the step-by-step what you need to do to get started. So Salesforce Functions now, as I mentioned, loves Heroku data. Before this integration, what you needed to do is create the Heroku data resource and configure manually the variables in your function. Now we have the ability to do that automatically using the developer tools. How does that look like? So first, using the Salesforce Cli, what are we going to do is, in our Salesforce Functions account, we are going to add the Heroku user that owns the resources as a collaborator on our Functions account. For that, we run this command, we pass the email of the Heroku user, and now that Heroku user, we will be able to attach resources to a compute environment. Then we need the name of the compute environment. What is the compute environment? When we deploy functions, the functions are not deployed to an org. They are deployed to an elastic compute environment. It's a server container that has your functions. That server container is connected to the org. So the org have access to those resources, and these resources can scale elastically without any problem. So the compute environment is where the functions live and run. So we need to get the name of that compute environment so we can attach the resources. Then we use the Heroku CLI, which is the owner of the data resources, to attach those. We attach the name of the data resource, this could be either Postgres, Redis, or Apache Kafka, to the name of my compute environment. And now all of the variables are going to be transferred automatically. If something changes in my Heroku configuration, it's going to be updated in our compute environment as well. So we don't need to do the process manually every time we change the resource. Let's take a look how we do this in Heroku Postgres. So, as you might have guessed, first, we need to have Heroku Postgres on our Heroku account. For this example, I am creating a free version of the Heroku Postgres on my Heroku account. So I am running the command, Heroku add-ons create, and I'm selecting the Heroku PostgreSQL service with the hobby dev plan. It's the plan that is for free, that you can use. It has certain limitations, but for the purposes of this presentation, it's good. What we are looking here is the name of the resource. That's the one we need to have in order to attach the resources. For my example, it's called PostgreSQL Polish and a number. You can also get that name by running Heroku PG info or by going to the Heroku dashboard. I have my Heroku dashboard here open. Let me zoom in. I have Postgres. And as you can see, I can get the name from my Heroku dashboard as well. So that's the name we need to do the attachment. And also, you don't need to run the command to create the Heroku Postgres. I'm a developer. I love the CLI tools. But you can also go to the dashboard, click here on quickly add on elements, find Postgres, click, submit a form, and I have a new PostgreSQL server attached to my account, and this has a different name. So you can do it like through the web dashboard or through the CLI. Okay, now let's attach the resources. So we previously got the name of the compute environment by running the command sf list. This is giving me the list of compute environments that are available on my Heroku, on my Salesforce Functions account. For that, you will need to be logged in to your Salesforce Functions account. Let me show you how that looks like. And you will see that I have like a million of resources. So login functions. Let me log in. Let's hope I have internet. If not, nothing is going to work. Yes, I have internet. So I'm trying to log into my Salesforce Functions account. I'm going to be using one of my trial accounts. Success. And now I can run sfm list. List all. And now I have the different compute environments listed here. As I told you, I work a lot with functions, so I have multiple times. But what you need to get is the name of the compute environment. This is the one that you need to attach the resources. Okay, let's continue. To attach the resources, you run Heroku add-ons attach. Is to make the attachment between Heroku and functions with the name of the data resource and the name of the compute environment, and that's it. After that, you will have that environment variable available in your function. After you getting that environment variable available in your function, you will be able to use, depending on the language of your choice, either library to connect to Postgres. In my example, I am using Node Postgres. I'm getting that database URL from the environment, which is the process.env property, and creating a client connection. Or if I use Java, I might use the JDBC PostgreSQL driver and perform the connection on a similar way, getting the database URL from the environment using system.getDem and constructing the data connection. The same process is for Redis. If you are going to use Redis for caching or for perform certain key store operations, you need to do the same. You can create a Redis add-on by running the command or by going to the dashboard. It will spawn an instance of Redis in your Heroku account. You can also get the name of the Redis resource from Redis info on the CLI or after you create the resource, or also from the dashboard. And you attach the resources, and the same environment variable is going to be available in your function, which is going to be the Redis URL. Now, depending on the language of your choice, if you are using Node.js, you might want to use Node Redis to connect to that data store, perform the connection, getting the environment variable, and do your operations. Or if you are using Java, which is a little bit more complex, you use the Redis, which is the official Redis client for Java, to connect and integrate your function with either with Redis in this case. So let me show you in code how that looks like and run the examples. Okay. Let me open the project. So I have 4 different functions here. One is using Postgres in Java, the other one is using Postgres in JavaScript. And the 2 other functions, one is using Redis in Java and the other is using Redis in JavaScript. So for Java, if you want to use the drivers, make sure you add those to your POM XML file as a dependency. Our Java functions uses Maven to fetch the dependencies from the internet when the function is being built on the deployment process. So here I'm specifying the PostgreSQL driver so it can be fetched when I run in the function. And then in the source code, I have a very basic operation that I'm doing with PostgreSQL. So first I am creating the connection using the database URL property that we previously attached. And what is the operation that I'm doing here? I have a table that stores the invocation IDs, like the ID of the specific invocation of my function, just for the demo purposes. So every time I run this function, I am inserting the ID on the table, and then I am returning the results. That's it. It's a very basic function just to demonstrate that this works. If we want to run this into an org, I need to deploy this into a compute environment that is connected to an org. This takes time, and the only way to trigger this function, it will be from the org using Apex. But what if we are developing and we want to try this? I want to show you how to do that. So you can run functions locally without needing a Salesforce-enabled org by using the SF CLI, the Salesforce CLI tool. But the environment variable, since it is attached to the compute environment, is not going to be available locally. So you will need to set the environment variable the same way you set it while developing locally. So now, I already set the database URL environment variable locally, but how can you get them? You can get them by using your Heroku CLI. So you can run Heroku config, and with Heroku config, it will give you the list of those environment variables that are attached to your Heroku account. So you basically copy paste and create the environment variable on this terminal session. Then you go to your function folder. In this case, it's going to be the Postgres Java, is the example I'm going to run. And you are going to execute SF run function start. So this will run that function in Java locally in your computer, but since we already have that environment variable enabled, the data is going to be fetched from Heroku. So we are connected to Heroku. So now the function is running, and I'm going to be triggering that function locally. I trigger the function by running sfrun and passing the URL where the function is running on my local machine. Normally a function locally is going to run on a web container that runs on the port 8080. If I run this, it will insert a new ID and return the list of the invocations I did that I previously stored. For Redis, and I'm going to avoid the JavaScript code because it is very similar. I connect to the database and I do the same pretty much operation. For Redis, the same. I'm using the Redis Java client, which is Redis. I am creating the connection, and I am doing the same operations, but in Redis are different. I'm using an rpush to store the ID on a list, and I'm using L range to get all of the different all of the different values that are associated with that ID. And if I run it, I am going to get the values as well, and my 20 minutes are done. If any of you have questions, please, you can find me here on the right side. As I mentioned, with Apache Kafka on Heroku, it is the same. You do the same attachment. It will give you way more environment variables, including the private and public keys, so you can connect either from Node.js and JavaScript. If you want to learn more, sign up for the trial at functions.salesforce.com. Follow the Salesforce Developer blog. We constantly publish a lot of information about Salesforce Functions. And don't miss the next sessions that are later. How to integrate Salesforce Functions with LWR on commerce, and the cloud-native build packs that powers the different runtimes that Functions has. And Rad Women need your help, an amazing group of women that are teaching code using Apex. They are looking for mentors, a great way to volunteer and contribute. And thank you very much for your time. Till the next one. Bye.